When the silver fog lifted from the hills around Walcott Academy, Coach Camilla Reyes was already in the gymnasium, buffing fingerprints off the foils that would glint later during Founders Weekend. The school's annual celebration was equal parts heritage pageant and old money reunion. And this year the committee had begged Camilla to stage a historical fencing demonstration using the McAllister sabre, an heirloom bequeathed by the Academy's Revolutionary-era benefactor. The sabre, rumoured to have tasted British steel at Bunker Hill, normally lived behind alarmed glass in the campus museum. Tradition excited Camilla, but antiques made her uneasy. She preferred modern carbon fibre blades and electric scoring, objects that couldn't be ruined by a clumsy lunge. Still, she had agreed to choreograph a bout between senior captains Felix Zhang and Blaise Carter, both headed to NCAA programs next fall. They had rehearsed for 2 weeks, weaving textbook parries with swashbuckling flourishes the alumni loved. By Friday evening, the prop tables were aligned, the lights adjusted, and the student tech crew dismissed. Camilla checked the museum's humidity gauges, nodded to the night guard, and locked the gym doors behind her. Her watch read 11:42 p.m. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the pines as she jogged down the gravel path toward faculty housing. She slept 4 hours, woke before dawn, and returned to the gym to oversee final sound checks. The museum wing, attached to the south wall of the gymnasium, was supposed to remain sealed until the Board of Trustees' brunch at 10. Camilla paused outside its oak doors, frowning. The latch sat crooked. A sliver of brass glittered on the floor, a hinge screw. She pushed inside. The security glass that had caged the McAllister sabre now lay in powdered shards across the parquet floor. Where the sabre had rested on its velvet cradle, there was only a hollow impression and a curled fragment of museum tape. Camilla swore under her breath. Then another sound sliced the silence, a muffled cry, followed by hurried footsteps echoing down the adjoining corridor. She rushed toward it, glimpsing 2 silhouettes disappearing through a fire exit stairwell. By the time she reached the door, only the smell of sweat and iron remained. At 7:13 a.m., Camilla called Headmaster Barlow. By 7:25, campus security cordoned off the wing, and by 8, the first busloads of alumni were already disembarking at the archway, oblivious. Barlow met Camilla near the shattered case, face ruddy, tie askew. "Tell me we have footage." "Cameras went dark at 2:59, answered Officer Linden, the stocky former state trooper who supervised the school's 2-man security team. A wire had been snipped cleanly. The DVR showed snowy nothingness. Barlow exhaled through his mustache. "A stolen artifact during Founders Weekend. The trustees will skin us, and we've a different incident complicating the morning." Camilla lifted an eyebrow. "One of your fencers," Barlow said. "Miles Overton. He's in the infirmary with a gash across his upper arm. Claims he slipped on a stair. Nurse Hollis thinks it was blade work." "Miles is a foilist," Camilla said. "He'd never be so clumsy he'd carve open his own shoulder." Barlow's gaze wandered to the ruined case. Could the 2 events be related? Camilla touched a serrated edge of glass. "Leave me an hour with the kids. Let the gala proceed. If I find anything incriminating, you'll know before the champagne toast." The headmaster hesitated, but Founders Weekend was a locomotive no one could derail without splintering the tracks. He nodded and marched off to greet donors. Camilla bent to inspect the debris. Amid the glittering glass lay an object that did not belong, a rubber tip from a practice foil, its red paint chipped. She pocketed it and headed for the infirmary, boots squeaking on the polished floor. Miles Overton lay shirtless under fluorescent lights, saline drip feeding into his arm. His bandage was fresh but already blotched pink. "Miles," Camilla said gently, "tell me what happened." He offered a woozy smile. "Slipped, like I told Nurse Hollis." "Miles, you're 18 and you finished differential equations before breakfast. Give me more credit." His eyes darted toward the doorway, then back. "Felix and Blaze can't get in trouble," he whispered. "It wasn't their fault." "Why would they be?" Miles bit his lower lip hard enough to whiten it. "It was just supposed to look dramatic. We didn't think the blade would bite that deep." Camilla leaned closer. "A staged duel." He shut his eyes, either from shame or the pain meds. "Ask Felix," he murmured, and rolled onto his good side. She left him sleeping and crossed the quad to Hawthorne Hall, where the varsity squad bunked on the top floor. Felix Jang emerged at her knock, already in pressed slacks and blazer, school crest gleaming over his breast pocket. "Coach," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, "are we rescheduling the demonstration?" "That depends," Camilla replied, steering him into the hallway. "Why is Miles bleeding?" Felix's expression remained placid, but his left hand twitched, thumb skating over the rampant wolf cuff button. "We rehearsed a tableau in the theatre last night," he admitted. "Blaze and I parried around him so the saber would appear to strike his arm. We used a dulled prop, but the angle was wrong." "Why was Miles even standing in the line of attack?" Felix inhaled, cheeks hollowing. "He volunteered. Said the imagery would impress the benefactors, modern students defending the founder's legacy. Blaze recorded everything for the weekend promo. We didn't steal anything, Coach." "What time did you leave the theatre?" 2:45. Camilla remembered the cameras cutting out at exactly 2:59 a.m. "And the McAllister saber, who fetched it?" Felix's calm shattered for a heartbeat. "It wasn't in the case when we got there." Camilla filed that away and descended the stairs. Theatre, she thought. She'd taught footwork on its warped floorboards for rainy day practices. Its backstage offered more hiding places than any maze. Students swarmed the main green in vintage uniforms for the historical pageant. Bagpipes bleated. Camilla slipped through the side door of the 1890 auditorium. Dust motes drifted in cones of slanted sunlight. A faint metallic smell lingered. Blood, she guessed, from Miles's injury. She followed scuff marks across the stage to a loose floorboard. Underneath was merely a prop pistol and discarded energy drink cans, but wedged beside the joist lay a monogrammed handkerchief embroidered with the initials B.C. Blaze Carter's. She found him 15 minutes later behind the bleachers, hair still damp from a shower, elbowing a vending machine that had eaten his dollar. "You rehearsed with the McAllister saber last night," she said without preamble. Blaze straightened his shoulders. "We had permission. Dean Ainsley approved the theatre booking. I didn't ask about the stage. I asked about the saber." He flashed a practiced grin. "I figured there'd be no harm taking a few selfies with it. Heritage, yeah. I put it back." "And the handkerchief?" "Lost in the dark, I guess." His nonchalance irked her, but she sensed genuine surprise when she mentioned the stolen artifact. Either he was a flawless liar, or someone else had snatched the saber after the trio fled the theatre. Camilla checked the schedule. At 11 o'clock, the alumni procession would enter the Gym Museum for the unveiling of the saber. If it didn't reappear by then, the theft would detonate in front of 3 governors, 2 senators, and the Chronicle's education reporter. She returned to the museum. Officer Linden was photographing shoe prints. "No luck on the master key," he rumbled. Maintenance log shows it checked out at 1:10 a.m. by archivist Palmer, signed back in at 4. Dr. Henrietta Palmer was the Academy's stoic archivist nearing retirement. She treated the collection like orphaned children. Camilla couldn't imagine her absconding with the saber, unless she'd caught someone else trying and spirited it away for safekeeping. Camilla hurried to the archives annex. Inside, shelves of acid-free boxes formed narrow alleys, scented with cardboard and cedar oil. Dr. Palmer, tall, tweed-clad, hair coiled like candle smoke, stood at a microfilm viewer, glasses perched at the tip of her nose. "Coach Reyes," she greeted, voice as crisp as onion skin. "I expected security, not you." "I'm auditing every pair of hands that touch the master key," Camilla said. "You signed it out?" "For a humidity check. The seasonal shift plays havoc on the textiles." "Did you see anyone near the saber case?" Palmer hesitated, sliding a microfiche back into its sleeve. "I passed a student exiting the wing, a boy in an antique cavalry coat. Couldn't see his face beneath the tricorn." Founders Weekend had ushered in hundreds of period costumes, perfect camouflage. Camilla thanked her and headed for the loading dock behind the theatre. Prop trunks sat open, costumes sorted by era. Hanging on a rack was a dark blue cavalry coat, embroidered lapels shimmering with gold braid. Fresh flecks of tempered glass clung to its cuffs. She'd found her shred of certainty. Camilla dialed Officer Linden, but his line rang busy. She pocketed her phone and inspected the coat pockets. Receipt stubs from the campus coffee bar. A student ID, Miles Overton. The timeline pivoted. The shy junior had worn the coat, left the museum, met Felix and Blaze at the theatre, then been accidentally cut. Why would Miles risk expulsion to steal an artifact? Perhaps he hadn't planned to. Perhaps he'd been a pawn. Camilla spotted a second garment bag at the end of the rack, labelled with shipping tape, Carbonell and C. Lestirus, Boston. Inside lay a bespoke replica of the McAllister saber, brass hilt acid-aged, blade scuffed to mimic colonial steel. The weight distribution felt wrong, the balance hilt-heavy like a theatre prop, but an untrained trustee might never notice. Someone had swapped the genuine saber for a fake. If the replica replaced the real one at the 11 a.m. unveiling, the theft could pass undetected until after donors wrote their checks. Classic long con. Who would profit? An antique dealer could fence the original for 6 figures. A financially strapped student could be tempted, but forging such a sophisticated duplicate required professional skill. Camilla thought of the maintenance logs again. Palmer had academic access to conservation labs in Boston, labs with 3D scanners and metallurgical equipment. But the handkerchief, the glass-dusted coat, all pointed to students. Maybe Palmer masterminded, students executed. She needed proof and time was short. Across campus, bells tolled 10:30. Camilla commandeered a rolling exhibit cart and covered it with a linen cloth. She laid the replica saber inside, then wheeled it through service corridors to the gym, where trustees mingled over mimosas. A hush fell as she entered. Tradition dictated that the saber be presented by the fencing coach. She bowed slightly. "Please excuse the cloth, distinguished guests. Maintenance is polishing the display pedestal. We'll reveal the saber during the demonstration at noon. Until then, the artifact will remain under my stewardship." Murmurs rose, but she moved on before questions hardened into suspicion. In the hallway, Blaze waited, tuxedo jacket slung like a cape. "Coach, what's going on?" "We're changing the program," she whispered. "Meet me in the salle in 20 minutes. Bring Felix and Miles if he can walk." He stared at her like she had asked him to juggle chainsaws, but nodded. The fencing cell occupied the upper gym balcony, windows overlooking the quad. Command strips of floor lights illuminated metallic pieces. Camilla lifted window sashes to invite the murmur of the festival and stationed herself by the weapon rack. The replica saber glistened beside her, still beneath the cloth. Blaze arrived first, Felix behind him. Miles shuffled in last, grey-faced but upright, arm in a sling. Officer Linden followed, summoned by Camilla's earlier text. Coach's orders, Blaze announced, half mocking. "We're here." Camilla locked the door. "I need the truth. The real saber's missing." Miles wore a cavalry coat that matches a witness description and has glass from the museum display. Felix shot Miles a lethal look. "You said no one saw you." Miles sagged against a bench. Felix, I'm sorry. She cornered me." "Who hired you?" Camilla asked. Miles's voice broke. "No one hired me. He swallowed. "I hired myself. Debt, okay? My dad lost his job. I figured if I passed the replica off this weekend, I'd have months before anyone noticed." He wiped his eyes with his good hand. "But I needed access codes and distraction. Felix and Blaze have the clout. They guard the sword during drills. I convinced them a flashy duel would wow the donors. They didn't know about the theft." Blaze cursed softly. "You used us." Felix's jaw worked, no words emerging. Officer Linden stepped forward. "Where's the real saber now, son?" "In my dorm." Miles pointed at his sling. "Top shelf of the wardrobe. The duel was supposed to be fake, but Felix's blade slipped." He turned to Felix. "After I got cut, I panicked, stashed the saber in my room, and went to the infirmary." A silence thickened, broken only by banners rustling in the open windows. Camilla studied Miles, pale, frightened, but telling the truth now, she believed. Yet something still grated. How had a debt-riddled teenager commissioned a museum-grade replica? "Where'd you get the duplicate?" Miles hesitated. "Online, a prop studio in Boston." Officer Linden cocked an eyebrow. "Paid how?" Miles faltered. "Prepaid Visa, $1,400. Camilla lifted the replica again. "This blade is pattern-welded steel. Even a cheap copy would cost triple that. Who subsidized you?" The door latch clicked behind them. Dr. Palmer stepped in, closing it with deliberate care. "I did," she said. Felix stepped back instinctively, hand reaching for a foil. Linden leveled a glare. "Ma'am, you shouldn't—" Palmer raised an envelope thick with documents. "Spare me the theatrics, officer. I've restored artifacts longer than you've enforced parking tickets. The McAllister saber is a counterfeit already, swapped decades ago by a headmaster who sold the original to finance an illicit affair. This," she pointed at the cloth-shrouded replica, "is no less authentic than what gathered dust behind the glass." The room felt suddenly smaller. Blaze spoke first. "You're lying." Palmer's eyes glittered. "Check the carbon content, Coach Reyes. The so-called original blade contains vanadium, impossible for 18th century steel. I discovered the forgery last year while cataloguing. The board refused to fund further testing. They feared scandal. So I plotted my own solution. Stage a theft, plant a decoy, and leak the truth after I retire. The insurance payout would finance a scholarship, and Wolcott would be forced to pursue the real saber, salvaging its narrative." Camilla folded her arms. "And Miles?" "A willing accomplice who needed money," Palmer said. "I supplied the replica. He performed the heist. Everyone wins. Until your captains improvised theatrics and painted the plan with blood." Miles looked ill. "She said no one would get hurt." Officer Linden pulled cuffs from his belt. "Dr. Palmer, You're under arrest for conspiracy, destruction of property, suborning a minor. Palmer unsheathed a slender épée from inside her tweed coat. Its point hovered at Lyndon's chest. I prefer civil discourse to shackles, officer, and I'd value Coach Reyes's opinion, which is worse for Walcott, admitting it displayed a fake for decades, or blaming a pension-ready archivist for daring to rectify history. Camilla stepped forward, positioning herself between the blade and Lyndon. Put it down, Henrietta. This isn't a duel. You miscalculated. You involved students. Palmer's expression softened, almost maternal. A necessary flourish. History adores drama. So does justice, Camilla replied. She removed a foil from the rack, flicked off the rubber tip, and adjusted her stance, en garde. If you're determined to wave steel, cross with someone trained. Palmer's lips curved in sad appreciation. She lunged. Camilla parried, deflecting the épée with a crisp clang that echoed through the salle. Felix and Blaze herded miles behind Matt's. Lyndon radioed for backup but stayed clear. Camilla needed room. Palmer advanced again, blade lightning fast despite her 60-odd years. Camilla countered with a circular parry 4, riposting toward Palmer's sleeve, slicing a button free. Enough, she panted. The sabre's safe. Surrender. Palmer's shoulders sagged. The épée tip drooped. I once fenced for Pembroke, she said wistfully. Bronze at nationals, did you know? I do now, Camilla said. Palmer opened her fingers. The blade clattered. Lyndon cuffed her with professional efficiency. Sirens approached as campus security converged. By noon, the trustees were informed in a closed-door session. Lyndon retrieved the real sabre from Miles's wardrobe, confirming its authenticity with serial microscopy at a local lab. The founder's blade would be conserved off-site until a new, more secure exhibit could be designed. Headmaster Barlow issued a carefully worded statement crediting Coach Reyes and Officer Lyndon for swiftly resolving a complex security breach. Palmer resigned, pending legal proceedings. Miles faced disciplinary hearings, but given Palmer's manipulation and his cooperation, was offered counselling and community service. Felix and Blaze's televised duel was cancelled. Instead, they performed a sober demonstration of classical technique, dedicating the bout to accountability in sport and scholarship. That evening, Camilla walked the empty gym, lights dimmed, the scent of floor polish lingering like a memory. She paused before the vacant plinth where the McAllister sabre had rested only a day earlier. She imagined the founder himself, Colonel McAllister, standing ghost-like beside her, bemused at the whirl of deceit spun around his old weapon. Then she pictured Palmer, passionate yet misguided, and Miles, desperate under the weight of debt. The blade, she realized, was merely steel. It was people who turned steel into legend, or into leverage. Outside, the fog returned, rolling over the lawns. Camilla closed the museum doors, double-checked the new lock officer Lyndon had installed, and strode toward the quad, where distant laughter floated. Founders' Weekend would conclude with fireworks that night, bright explosions blotting the sky. In the hush before the first rocket, Coach Camilla Reyes inhaled the cool air. Tomorrow, practice would resume. She would teach students to lunge, parry, and above all, to know precisely where their point landed, on the piste, in history, and in each other's lives.